The movie opens on a desolate Scottish island, a place forgotten by the world. Here, a solitary man named Mason guards an abandoned lighthouse with only his loyal dog for company. Through his binoculars, Mason watches a small boat approach the shore. Aboard are a local man and his niece, Jessie, delivering Mason's weekly rations. Jessie takes a dinghy to the shore and drops the supplies by Mason's cabin. Though she's never even seen the mysterious keeper, she leaves a small gift behind before turning back. Once she's gone, Mason descends from his tower, gathers his food, but deliberately ignores the gift. Inside his isolated cabin, he unpacks his supplies, feeds his dog, and settles into his grueling routine. Mason lives a life of total isolation, playing chess against himself, listening to the static of the radio, and suffering through violent, terrifying nightmares that jolt him awake. For months, this is his entire existence. Until one day, a massive storm begins brewing on the horizon. Jessie arrives for her usual delivery, but her uncle warns her to be quick. This time, instead of just dropping the supplies, Jessie boldly knocks on Mason's door. Mason opens it, snatches the crates, and bluntly tells her never to come back. As he tries to shut her out, Jessie stops the door, handing him the gift he abandoned last time and demanding a simple "thank you." Unmoved, Mason tells her to follow orders, kicks her foot out of the doorway, and slams the door in her face. Furious, Jessie yells that she isn't afraid of him, drops the gift, and marches back to the water. Her uncle screams for her to hurry as the fierce winds and violent waves begin to crash. Despite the deadly weather, Jessie gets into her dinghy and rows frantically toward her uncle's boat. Suddenly, a monstrous wave slams into her, flipping the small craft. From his lighthouse, Mason sees her go under. He sprints to a motorboat, but the engine dies immediately. Without hesitation, he dives into the freezing, turbulent water and swims toward her. Below the surface, Jessie is hopelessly tangled in a heavy fishing net. Mason dives deep, cuts her loose, and drags her to the surface. But the storm claims a victim. Her uncle's boat sinks, taking him down with it. Mason hauls a lifeless Jessie onto his boat and performs relentless CPR until she finally gasps for air. That night, Jessie wakes up in Mason's cabin. Panicked, she asks about her uncle. When Mason gently tells her he drowned, Jessie breaks down in tears. For the first time, a look of profound sorrow crosses Mason's hardened face. The next morning, Mason checks on her and notices her leg is badly swollen. As he wraps it, Jessie asks why he hasn't called for help, demanding to go home before her family starts looking for her. She questions why he's even living in an abandoned lighthouse. Mason coldly shatters her world, revealing she has no family left. Her mother died long ago, her uncle was all she had, and she never even knew her father. Stunned, Jessie asks how he could possibly know that. Mason doesn't answer. He simply walks out with his dog, leaving Jessie in absolute shock. Desperate for answers, she searches the cabin for any clue to his identity, finding only a combat knife, which she hides. Later that night, Mason hears Jessie thrashing in the grip of a nightmare. He approaches to comfort her, but she wakes up terrified and holds him at knife point. Mason calmly diffuses the situation, telling her it was just a dream, and proceeds to give her a crash course in knife defense. Days turn into weeks, and Jessie slowly lowers her guard, even befriending the dog. Over a meal, she asks how he knew her uncle. Mason reveals they served in the military together. When she asks for his name, he says it isn't important. Astonished that even the dog doesn't have a name, she decides to call him Jack. Soon after, Jessie points out a clever chess move on his board. Thrilled to finally have a worthy opponent, Mason warms up to her. But when he checks her leg, the wound is severely infected. Jessie asks to go to a hospital, but Mason refuses, promising to get antibiotics from town. After he leaves, Jessie looks through his sketches and smiles when she notices he finally opened her gift, a miniature lighthouse. Meanwhile, in the city, Mason expertly dodges pharmacy security cameras to steal the medicine. Cut to a high-stakes parliamentary committee in London. The head of British intelligence, Manafort, is under heavy fire for SIA, an illegal, highly advanced surveillance program invading citizens' privacy. Manafort arrogantly defends the system, claiming it predicts threats and that the Prime Minister approved it. The committee isn't buying it, announcing an immediate investigation into both of them. Manafort rushes to the Prime Minister, who coldly informs him that she needs a fall guy. She strips him of his power, promoting his deputy, Roberta.
but secretly promises to reinstate Manafort once the political storm blows over.
Back in town, Mason buys Jessie some fresh clothes, carefully avoiding cameras. But on his way out, he accidentally walks past some teenage girls taking a video call. In a flash, facial recognition software tags him. Instantly, alarms blare at MI6 headquarters. Roberta and her team make a terrifying discovery. Mason's iris scan matches an international terrorist wanted for a brutal embassy bombing. Tracking him to Scotland, Roberta deploys a lethal special forces unit. Back at the cabin, Mason treats Jessie's leg and gives her the clothes. She's thrilled, thanking him warmly, and Mason actually smiles. That night, he cooks her favorite pasta, but the peaceful moment is shattered when Jack the dog starts growling. Mason peers into the darkness and spots the tactical team closing in. He gears up, shoves Jessie into the bathroom with a knife, and orders her to stay hidden. Mason steps out into the night and unleashes hell. He trips a wire, dragging one soldier into the ocean to drown. Realizing they have night vision, he fires up blindingly bright halogen lights, disorienting the squad. A brutal firefight ensues. Mason takes a bullet but keeps moving, turning the environment into a weapon. He burns one operative with a kerosene lamp and throws another off a jagged cliff. But one soldier slips past him, breaching the lighthouse. Jack attacks viciously, but the soldier guns the brave dog down, kicks in the bathroom door, and drags Jessie out. Mason spots the kidnapper, raises his weapon, and takes him out with a single lethal shot. Checking on a traumatized Jessie, Mason tells her to wait. He walks into the cabin, finds Jack's lifeless body, and whispers a heartbreaking apology to his loyal friend. Pulling out a burner phone, he makes a coded call to an unknown contact, signaling that he's burned and traveling with a child. He destroys the phone, returns to Jessie, and tells her Jack is gone. They have to move now. Back at MI6, Roberta is in absolute disbelief that one man wiped out an elite strike team. She makes a drastic call, activating Workman, a legendary Tier 1 Black Ops assassin. Workman gets the text and immediately gears up for war. By morning, Mason and Jessie reach a bustling port. Mason is bleeding heavily but pushes through the pain. Spotting a parked truck, he hands Jessie a shotgun, teaches her the basics, and goes into a nearby house for the keys. Inside, he's ambushed by a young boy and his armed father. Suddenly, Jessie kicks the door open, aiming the shotgun right at the homeowner, demanding he help Mason and promising they won't hurt his family. Meanwhile, MI6 analyst Maddie uncovers a massive conspiracy. Someone used self-deleting malware to swap Mason's file with the terrorists. Mason isn't a bomber. He's an elite Special Forces operative presumed dead for 10 years. When Maddie tries to pull his real file, it's completely erased. Suddenly, a 911 call from a Scottish farm pings on their radar. They have Mason, but rogue ex-director Manafort hacks into the SIA system from a covert tech hub, spying on Roberta's feed. While Roberta orders her teams to capture Mason alive, Manafort bypasses her. He directly texts Workman, manipulating the assassin into believing this is a top-secret black op. Manafort's orders are absolute: kill Mason on sight and execute the girl. At the farm, the terrified homeowner finishes stitching Mason's wound. Mason thanks him but notices the young boy is missing. The kid nervously admits he called the cops. Mason tells Jessie to stay down as police cruisers swarm the property. The father and son make a run for it, but Workman suddenly arrives and ruthlessly executes the father. Mason dives into the line of fire, pulling the young boy to safety. Grabbing Jessie, Mason escapes through the back, engaging 2 police officers in brutal hand-to-hand combat. He knocks them out, grabs their tasers, and systematically incapacitates the rest of the squad, stealing a police cruiser to escape. Enraged, Roberta tries to contact Workman, but the assassin has gone totally dark. Workman is hot on Mason's tail, ramming his cruiser at high speeds. Mason executes a violent swerve, throwing Workman off balance, then slams his brakes. Workman crashes into him at full speed, sending his car violently flipping down the highway. Mason ditches the wrecked cop car and steals a fresh ride. Roberta calls Manafort, demanding answers about Mason,
Feigning ignorance, Manafort spins a web of lies, claiming Mason was a rogue assassin who betrayed the UK for a massive payday 10 years ago, urging her to put him in the ground. But Roberta doesn't buy it. Maddie hands her a decrypted flash drive revealing the shocking truth. 10 years ago, Mason was ordered to assassinate a foreign nuclear scientist who was secretly helping the British government. When his superiors ordered the hit to cover their own tracks, Mason refused to pull the trigger. Watching through the hacked cameras, Manafort realizes Roberta knows everything. On the road, Jessie asks Mason about his family. He says he's alone. She replies that she is too. Mason tells her she has to be strong, and she hands him a heartfelt drawing of Jack. They pull up near a church, but a passing dashcam captures their faces. Manafort instantly intercepts the footage, deletes it so MI6 can't see it, and forwards the GPS coordinates straight to Workman.
Inside the church, they meet Arthur, the tech genius who faked Mason's death a decade ago. Arthur takes him to his remote safe house, where Jessie accidentally discovers he is dying of cancer. Mason asks Arthur to trace the leak. Arthur reveals that he helped build the SIA system, and only Manafort could have used it to frame Mason. Mason asks Arthur to protect Jessie, but Arthur refuses, knowing he won't live much longer. Mason suggests taking her to Kamal, a notorious underworld smuggler. Arthur strongly objects, but Mason assures him he can handle it. Suddenly, gunfire erupts. Workman blasts through the front door, engaging Mason in a brutal room-to-room brawl. Workman drops his gun and Jessie snatches it up, aiming it at the assassin to save Mason. Workman lunges and disarms her, but Mason grabs a high-powered nail gun, shooting Workman point blank. The trio jumps into Arthur's car and speeds away under a hail of bullets. Workman texts Manafort that the targets escaped, prompting a furious Manafort to deploy his own personal kill squad. Arthur gives Mason an untraceable burner phone, says a heartfelt goodbye to Jessie, and parts ways. On the drive to London, Jessie wonders if this violence will turn her into a monster like Mason. He promises her she is nothing like him, swearing that tonight she gets a brand new life. When she begs to go with him, he refuses, telling her his life is a nightmare of paranoia and she deserves better. That night, Mason and Jessie arrive at Kamal's underground London nightclub. Ignoring the security cameras, Mason brutally beats the bouncers to get a face-to-face with the smuggler. Simultaneously, Maddie finally traces the SIA hack directly back to Manafort. In the club, Kamal laughs in Mason's face, refusing to help. Mason flips the script, revealing that MI6 is 10 minutes away. If they raid the club, Kamal's illicit ties to Manafort will put him in prison forever. Mason offers a lethal trade. He will stay behind, slaughter the hitmen, and bury Manafort's secrets if Kamal smuggles Jessie out of the country. Kamal agrees. In a holding room, Jessie begs Mason not to sacrifice himself. He tells her that men like him don't get happy endings, and she has to be brave. She begs him to promise he won't die, but Mason just stares back in silence.
Kamal hands Jessie a fake passport, 200,000 euros, and passage to a Spanish safe house. The boat leaves in 30 minutes. As they move to the exit, Manafort's heavily armed hit squad breaches the club. Mason moves like a ghost, snapping necks and dropping bodies, but they overwhelm him, and a mercenary stabs him deep in the back. Jessie leaps onto the attacker, but he throws her off. Enraged, Mason goes ballistic, gunning down half the squad in a hail of bullets. But in the chaos, a mercenary grabs Jessie and throws her into a getaway van. Mason loses his mind, sprinting after them. Roberta's MI6 agents swarm the alley, but Mason incapacitates them non-lethally, saving his bullets for Manafort's men, leaving a trail of bodies until he reaches the van and pulls a crying Jessie into his arms. Spotting workmen charging through the alley, Mason hotwires a scooter and speeds off into the night.
They reach the docks. The boat is waiting. Mason puts Jessie on board, but she is completely hysterical, refusing to leave without the only family she has left. Mason holds her face, promising he will always be right by her side. Suddenly, Workman opens fire. Mason shoves Jessie into the boat, using himself as a shield until she is safely away. Out of ammo, Mason and Workman engage in an epic, bloody hand-to-hand deathmatch on the docks. Battered and bleeding, Mason grabs a heavy iron chain and a steel pipe, beating the legendary assassin into submission before snapping his neck. The next morning, Manafort is relaxing in his luxury home. He notices his guards are dead. He turns around to find Mason standing in his living room.
Sweating, Manafort tries to negotiate, offering Mason his life, his identity, and his job back. Mason replies by putting a bullet right between his eyes.
3 months later, the sun shines over a beautiful cafe in Spain. Jessie sits peacefully reading a book. Nearby, Roberta's undercover MI6 agents are still watching her, hoping Mason will show up. One agent complains it's a waste of time, but Roberta knows Mason destroyed a small army for this girl. He will come back. Suddenly, a street surveillance camera abruptly tilts up toward the sky. Roberta just smiles. At the cafe, a waitress named Elena hands Jessie a small bag, saying it's from a friend. Jessie opens it to find a set of hand-carved chess pieces. Across the bustling street, Mason stands in the shadows, smiling warmly at her. Jessie turns, but he vanishes into the crowd. She beams with absolute joy, knowing that Mason kept his promise. He will always be right by her side. If you enjoyed this recap, drop a like and subscribe to Movie Recaps Hour. See you in the next one.